Take a vach from Yerushalayim Kodesh, Kaselo, Shin Pei Gimel, Baruch Hashem. So we're up to today's daf is Yud Gimel, we're up to Yud Beis, Summit Beis. We're about 2, 4, 6, about 10 lines to the bottom, right? I mean, a little higher. Who gathered? There was an individual, the Kodesh Bitzipusa da Asa. He went ahead, he used a mat of reeds, a mat of myrtle that was made from Hadassim, and it seems it was not worth much money. So Amrulay, for less Shava Pruta, there's not a Shava Pruta in it. So now he gave it to this woman, he gave it to the woman, and while in the woman's possession, they said it's not a Shava Pruta. So Amalahu, he said, Tigdush ba'arba zuzei de ispa, be mikudeshes with the 4 zuz that are contained within the mat. So there was obviously zuz dinar, so there was money in the mat, but when he gave it to her, her smachel cherb was on the mat, and the mat wasn't worth a Shava Pruta. And what did she do? Shekalta. She remained silent. She didn't throw it. She didn't throw it away and say, "No, I don't want anything to do with this." Yishtika, and she remained silent. So the question is she acquiescing to the Kidushin or not? There was no Nesina, but now is she acquiescing to the original Nesina is not, but now maybe she's acquiescing by being quiet. How do we view her action? Do we view a lack of aggression, not throwing away the mat, that she's not Mikudeshes? Or do we say, yeah, no, that she is Mikudeshes, the fact that she didn't do this? So it's being quiet after the money was given already. Anytime you're quiet after matan mois, it's nothing. It doesn't count. Therefore, she is not mekudeshes. Rabbi says, how do I know that any time you give money and any shtika after money is not considered a nesina le'inyan being mekudeshes? It's Tanya. Amallah. If a man tells an isha, Kinsi ze bipikadin. Take this seller, take Kinsi seller ze bipikadin. Take the seller for bipikadin. And then when he gives it to her, then he says, Hiskachili boy. Be mikudeshes with the seller that I gave you, right? And mitaris bipikadin, be mikudeshes to me. Okay. So now, b'shas matan mois, mikudeshes. If he said at the time that he gave it over, then she's mikudeshes. However, lach matan mois, after matan mois. Okay, it's important. The Reisha guys noticed it doesn't make a chilik between whether she wants or not. It simply says that if she accepts it, she's mikudeshes. It says lashon stam mikudeshes. The Gemara will speak about this later on. La'acha matan mois. If, however, he says it to her, she's mikudeshes after he gave her the seller. Rotzta, she agreed mikudeshes. Loy rotzta and mikudeshes. Now we have to define what that means, but there's a chilik between whether a desire or not after what she had received the seller. My rotzna, my loy rotzna. In the sefer of this brisa, what does it mean she wants? What does it mean she doesn't want? Ilema, that rotzna means the amar in. She said yes. The loy rotzna, the amar loy, right? And loy rotzna is not. So now that's the sefer. So when the Reisha just said she's mikudeshes, michlal the Reisha, amir aleph, we can infer in the Reisha, ki amar loy nami havi kedushin. In other words, the chilik between yes and no is only in the sefer, right? But in the Reisha, where she's given the money already, in the Reisha, even if she says no, you're going to say she's mikudeshes. Again, the Reisha is speaking that b'shas she gave over the seller. So in the sefer, we gave over the seller, and you're going to touch up once she has it already, and she says yes, I agree to your request of Kidushin, or she says no, and she's not. So therefore, let's learn the Reisha. Meaning the Reisha, there's no chilik between saying yes or saying no. It said simply mikudeshes. Why are you giving her the money? Why in the world is she mikudeshes if she said no? Fred the Gemara, ki amar loy nami havi kedushin amai. Well, amar loy, she said not. So therefore, we have to go ahead and redefine what does it mean rotzta and loy rotzta. It says elolav rotzta the amar in loy rotzta. She said yes, and loy rotzta she didn't say anything. The ishtika mishtika. She was totally silent. Now, so you gave them money. She was totally silent. It's a very interesting diak, beautiful diak, actually. Okay, let's go through again. Gives the seller mitoras pikadin. As he's giving the seller, he says to her, "Be mikudeshes to me with this," and it says, "Wow, she's mikudeshes." Mikudeshes. Says the sefer, once she has it already, it depends. It depends whether she said yes or she was quiet. Right? In the Reisha, obviously she didn't say no, So if she didn't say no, she's going to be Mekudeshes, because it was before the Matan Mois. But once there was Matan Mois, in other words, in the ratio, she didn't want it, she should have taken the money and thrown it away. Okay, but she didn't. In the Sefer, she already has the money, right? She remained silent. She didn't throw it away. But once she had the money and she remained silent, says Rabbi, you have a raya that what? That shtika achamat mois is lav klumli. It's not mekudeshes. That's Rab's raya. We're going to ask on Rava. Kashuba b'pub nahara mishmei de Rav Huna b'reid of Yeshua. Rav Huna b'reid of Yeshua is a kasha, and he's want to say she is mekudeshes. Me dummy. What? How can you compare the case of Pikadin to the case where he gave her a machzeles with hidden money inside? Hasam b'toris Pikadin yavivnu nehala savra isha dina lahu umitberei mechayvin lahu. If you'll give me something b'toris Pikadin, meaning I have to watch it, it's halachas of the shomrim. So what am I supposed to do? Take it and throw it away? I can't throw it away. Memela hashtika is not a raya that she's mekudeshes. It's just a raya that she can go ahead and express, do an action that would express I'm not interested in you, because she would be chayiv. Masha'en came hacha over here. B'toris Kidushin yavim nelo, when he gave the mat. B'toris Kidushin yisa doy nichala. If she wasn't happy with it, l'shadina, she go ahead and thrown it away. So Rav Huna, the Rav Yeshua, wants to go ahead and taina. Then in fact, she would be mekudeshes in this case. He disagrees with Rava and says, in fact, over here, it's Rav Huna, Rav Yeshua, you would be mekudeshes in this case. Again, your raya, Allah says Rava. How do I know it? He brings some case of Pikadin. There's a big difference with the case of Pikadin and the case of the mat. By the case of Pikadin, she has no option to go ahead and throw it away because she'll be chayiv. Over here, if she really don't want mekudesh, she should have taken the mat when he said this for Susan the mat, and should have thrown it on the ground. She's not chayiv for this. Her failure to do this is, according to Rav Huna Rabbi Yeshua, a kabbalah of Kidushin and mekudeshes. So he argues on Rava. Paruch Rav Achai. Rav Achai asks on Rav Huna Rabbi Yeshua, Atukula Nashi Dina Gemiri. A woman such lamdanan to know that they by Shaimer, right? I could throw it away. I can't throw it away. But over here, I should know that I could throw it away. Maybe she doesn't know that halacha. Didn't it? Says Rashi, Dina Gemiri v'yada akivan like kibla netirusa Allah. And since she wasn't makabel as mitoris pikadin to watch it, ishadi lehu like the sky. They shouldn't be chayiv. In other words, you have to be a bit of a lamdin, to know a little bab mitzia, a little mishpatim, to know pashas mishpatim, to know what's going on over here. So says Rav Achai, I'm not buying this. I don't think the fact that she doesn't throw it down is not as kabbalah of kedushin. So Hachanami Savra, she also holds even when she mitaris kedushin, when the guy wasn't mitaris bikadim, isha dinalahu mitfrei eschayvinu nachri yisur. If I go ahead and throw it away, I'll be chayiv b'achri yusai, I'll be chayiv nachrayas. So therefore, Rav Achai says a shtika is not a raya of kabbalah's kedushin by her failure to throw it away. In Nochinami, he agrees with Rava, she would be in mekudeshes. Sholcha Rav Acha bar Rav Kamed Ravina D'Shaila Ki Agav Namai. What's the din? And Shalach Lei. So who's right? Is it halacha like Rava in mukudeshes or the halacha like Rav Huna Reider Yeshua? So he goes, L'shmiya lahad Rav Huna Reider Yeshua. Asayin the shmiya lachun you. Anon L'shmiya had Rav Huna Reider Yeshua. We didn't hear it. Asayin, but you the shmiya lahu chashlu. You should be chayis for the kedushin. Should be chayis for the kedushin of this shtika and the failure to throw it away. He is so there was this woman, Mizavna Varshachi. She was selling strips of silk. Asahu Gavra, Chote Vashcha Mina. He grabbed it away from her, and Amalei told her, Havanelei. She said, "Give it to me." Amalei, if I give it to you, will you be mekudeshes to me? Shushaklase ishtika. Right. She took it and she remained silent. Vom Rav Nachman, Yecholu L'meimar in Shakli v'didi Shakli. I went ahead and I took it. I took my own. I went ahead. I took it. I took my own. So therefore, what? It's not a lashon of kedushin, not acceptance of kedushin. So he grabs this. He grabs this silk thing from her, and she says, "Give it back to me." She says, "I'll give it back to. If I give it back to you, it'll be kedushin to me." She takes it back. It's not kedushin, because all she's doing is taking back what's rightfully hers. She didn't go ahead and give it to him, waive her rights and give it to him and accept it back. She simply said that we said in didi So she's a shakli v'didi shakli. I took back my own. So therefore, she's not mekudeshes. Esvei Rav Nachman, who said she's not mekudeshes. We have a Gemara in Daf Nun Beis Vaita. Kitsha begezel. In Mekadesha, you steal something from her and you Mekadesha with it. Ubechamas, you go ahead, take money and give it to her to forcefully purchase something from her. Ubeganeva, or you clandestinely went into a house and stole from her. Or you grabbed the seller from her hand. The Gemara is going to explain that that's the explanation of what? Of Gezel. Gemara Nun Beis when we get there. The Kitsha and Mekudeshes, you're Mekudeshes. So Rav Nachman, how can you say you're not Mekudeshes? You see, if you go ahead and you're Mekadesha with what you stole from her, so what is she doing? She's like being not Miyaya, she's giving it to you, and now she's accepting it as Kesef Kidushin. Over there it's speaking with what? You were speaking about marriage. Speaking about Shidduchim, you're speaking about marriage, huh? And therefore all you need is money, so she clearly wants to marry you. And therefore, she's happy to go ahead, waive any rights she has in this object that you took from her, and she'll accept it as Kesef Kedushin. But Shenkin over here, where it says that when you weren't Meshadich, right, then it's outright Geneva, and all she wants to do is get it back. How do you know there's a difference in Tanya? So we saw a brisa early on, that based on the base. We said a seller. He said, take this seller, take this seller as a pikadin. And we said that if she doesn't say anything, she's mekudeshes. B'shas and sinas the mois mekudeshes, and the sefer after the sinas the mois made a distinction between what's and loy rots. To be tight rush this, she said yes. And loy rots to be touched up, she said nothing. She was b'shoisik. So this is the sefer of that, right? The Tosefta. Amalei kinsi sela zu shani chayiv lechi. Take the seller mitaris piroyis chayiv. Take the seller that I'm chayiv to pay you. The chaz of Amar Allah, he scotchy liba, be mekudeshes to me with it. Shas matan mois, now here in the safe of the case before Bikadin, we just said simply the word mekudeshes. Over here, what are we saying? He scotchy liba, b'shas matan mois, rots the mekudeshes, loy rots the any mekudeshes. So now we're making a chilik in the by Bikadin where you just said stam mekudeshes, b'shas matan mois, and over here we're making a chilik. Lachamat and Mois, I feel what's the in Mekudeshes. If and Mois even she wants, it's in Mekudeshes. My Rasta, my Loy Rasta. In the Resha, my Rasta, my Loy Rasta. What's the difference? Right? Elema Rasta Dama in Loy Rasta Dama Loy, right? Ha Ishtika Mashma. Habi Kidushin. In other words, if you're going to say that Rasta means she verbally said yes. And Loy Rasta, she verbally said no. Mashma, if she would remain silent, it would be good Kidushin. V'nisti then Mekudeshes. So just learn Mekudeshes. In other words, you don't have to tell me the Chiddush if she says no, she's not Mekudeshes. That's obvious. So if the whole case is the following, Rotzta is she says yes, Loy Rotzta she says nothing, right? Then she's married. So why do you say Rotzta is Eina Mekudeshes? Just say Rotzta. So must be that what? That she wasn't silent. V'nisti mekudeshes stam, like you did in the Reisha, ki hasam, like you did in the Reisha by Pikadon. Ela rotzah dama in, le rotzah dishtika, b'katani dena mekudeshes. My timer. What's the reason she's in the case where she took the money to be pre-eschoiv, she took it back and she remained silent. So again, we're saying the same thing. Saying the same thing in the Reisha here that we said in the Sefer by Pikadon, that she remained silent. So that it's after it's speaking with B'shas Matan Mois. She remains silent, and you say in Mekudeshes. My time, she's able to say in Shakli with the Shakli, right? I took my own. I took my own. In other words, you're paying me a choy back. You know why I was silent when you said B'teres Kidushin? I just wanted to get my money back. So too over here, you should say the same thing. So when she took the silk back, right, I took it back for the Shakli. So you spoke about Kidushin, I don't care. I just wanted to get back. So just like over here by the Tosefta, I wanted to get back the chayv he owed me. Who I did over there by the silk? I just wanted to get back the silk that you stole from me. If that's the question, for you have the kitchen the gezel b'chamus b'geneva. I should have to sell me yada the kitchen b'kedesha. You have the kasha of what that Rav Yosef Nachman from the case of the where you stole from her and you are mekudeshes. You're telling me you just want to get back what was rightfully yours. But you have to conclude there's a chilik between the Tosefta where you're not mekudeshes and the Gemara in the Beis where Yom Mekudeshes. The Gemara in the Beis is speaking about Shidduchim, and our Gemara is speaking about where there was no Shidduchim, and therefore you can say in Didi Shakli, Didi Shakli. That's the raya. That's the difference between Shidduchim and not Shidduchim. The Gemara digresses. Kinoch nafshei Ravasi, when Ravasi was nifta, Aili Rabbanon l'nakutinu b'shmaitzid. Chachamim, they gathered together and they wanted to repeat over the shmuas that they heard b'shem Ravasi in order to go ahead and codify them to remember them, say them all together. So Amaluhu Hau Rabbanon Rav Yaakov Shmei said this Chacham, his name was Rav Yaakov. Hachi Amar Rav Asi Amar Rebbe Mani. Kishem Shein Isha Niknas Bepachas Mishava Pruta. Kachin Karka Niknas Bepachas Mishava Pruta. So the kesef with less than a Shava Pruta. So Amalei the Chacham said, but Tanya we learned the opposite. Afa Pishein Isha Niknas Bepachas Mishava Pruta. Karka Niknas Bepachas Mishava Pruta. So Amalahu, so Rabbi Yaakov said to the Chachamim, Ki Tanya Hahi. That's when it wasn't mitaris kesef, the lack of shavu pruta. That's bechalipin. They were using the kli mitaris chalipin to go ahead and make the kinyan. We weren't giving it mitaris kesef. Mitaris kesef, it has to be a shavu pruta, just like an isha. By chalipin, you could use the kli, we're less than a shavu pruta. Tanya koinim bekli achapishin b'shavu pruta. We had Gemara earlier that a woman is not nicknamed chalipin, right? Because chalipin works b'shavu pruta, less than a shavu pruta, and ein isha nickness less than a shavu pruta. How do you ask me again? They were saying over Shitas, the name of what? Of Rev. They were saying Shitas of Rav Asi, and now we get to a little Agadata. We get to a little Agadata. Okay. How do you ask me? How do Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel? Kol sheni yadei betiv gittin v'kedushin. Anyone who doesn't know the halachas about gittin and kedushin, lo yehei lo esek imohem. They shouldn't have anything to do with this. We had it earlier. We had it earlier in the Masechta. Where a person, the chayriv, doesn't know what's going on, but to get in Kidushin, you can go ahead and be mater and ish, create mamzeris, and very, very severe things. So a person should stay away from these things. So a beautiful marsha on this. The marsha states the order. It should, why don't you say Kidushin be gittin? Why Makba say gittin be Kidushin? So he goes, first of all, if it's just the initial Kidushin of a person, so what's the worst thing that can happen? You would go ahead and you would be mater a penuya, a girl who was never married, and there's no isra of chiv misa over there. So therefore, that's much easier to be involved with. Masha'en came where it's gittin, where already you have a cheskes shesish to mata, that would be a big problem. And not only would that be a problem, Kedushin afterwards might be a problem because you don't know if you can accept Kedushin after the Gittin. So therefore the Kedushin follows the Gittin rather than Kedushin before, because Kedushin before the Gittin, and what's your matter of Pnuya, but Gittin after Kedushin, if it's Getzaris, you might matter in Eshes. Very nice Pshat. So anyone who doesn't know should not have any asik. So Amar Rav Asi, and here's why we're bringing it in, because of Rav Asi's statement. Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan. Rav Asi said the name Rav Yochanan, the Koshan L'Olam Yosim Midar Amabel. A person who's involved, Yidayonim, who don't know what they're doing regarding what? Matering an Eshes Ish, allowing Chas V'Shalom and Eshes Ish to be Mizaneh is worse than what? Than the Dar Amabel. Shnemar, it says, Oloi v'kachesh v'roitzach v'gonev v'noyev parotzu. That Allah is swearing falsely, kachesh, denying, killing, gonev, stealing, noyev, nus, partsu. The Mamisha broke all through all perzi, knocked on every fence. And the pasuk concludes, v'domim b'domim nagau, and blood have met. Blood and blood had come together. Okay, and we're going to see this refers to the Isser of Eshes Ish. My mashma. How do you know this is what it's speaking of worse than the Dor HaMabel? Rabbi Yosef, like Rabbi Yosef, who was an expert in places brings over here, he brings in Baba Kamal also. He was an expert right in the beginning. He was an expert in Targum. Moldin benin min sheikh Harayim. They had children from their friends' wives. So choivin al choivin maisif, and they added averis upon averis. The Ksiv, it says al kain tev al oretz. Therefore, the land was destroyed. For umul kol yoshrei bar, and all people will be. They'll be all over the place. And even the fish are going to be totally yasafu, to be destroyed. That's if the Isra of Znus. The Ilu B'Dor HaMabel, however, it's speaking of the Dor HaMabel, like Nigzur Gezerah al Dagim Shebiyam. We know that the Dagim Shebiyam, the Gezerah, they went ahead. The Gemara says they swam down to the bottom where it wasn't so hot, and they avoided the heat of the mabel that was destroying the world. So we see over here it says anything that was in dry land died, but not the fish of the sea. That was by the cheda of the mabel. It says when it comes to the Aveira that Isaiah is giving us Musar about the Aveira of Ish, and there's Nus, then it's even the Digei Hayom will be punished. So you see, it's worse even in the Darwad of the Ramabel. The Ema Ad Abel Kulu, maybe Ishis is not worth. Maybe you have to do Allah Kichesh Gonav Noy, if you have to do all of them all together, the whole kit and caboodle. It says more Salkadaitov that you have to do all of them. Even one of them would do the job. The Chsiv says Allah Avla Haaretz, because of Allah, because of swearing falsely, the land should be destroyed. So you see, Allah will be alone. The Ema Allah L'chud, maybe Allah is alone. The Hani L'chudayin, and the other ones you have to do together, including Znus. You have to do them together. It says Mikasiv Upartsu. Does it say Partsu connecting everything together? No, Partsu Kasiv. And what it says Partsu, and therefore, and the next pasuk says, and as a result, it's going to be destroyed. So therefore, that's the raya that it's worse than the Darhamabel, where the Dogim were not destroyed versus Pritza, which is the Snus, where it was destroyed. And we brought this in because of Rav Ami in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Hadi Yasve V'Kamri Hadit Nan. Okay, a woman is a yoledis is chayv to bring two birds. One is a chatas and one is an oila. She brings a chatas and she brings an oila. Okay. Now, if she dies, there's halacha chatas shemesa b'alacha. You don't bring the carbon. What about the oila? There's a chiyuv for them to bring an oila. Now, this gets into the concept of whether shibudi deraisa or not. Whether there's a shibud on the property of the state to go ahead and bring it. If shibud deraisa, they would be mechuyev to bring the oila. If shibud malav deraisa, they would not be mechuyev to bring the oila. Okay, so now we're going to get into that. So Amar Rav Asi. So the names are important. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. I'm sorry. That not Yosef Kamar Haditnan Haisha Shevia Chatasa, a woman who brought a carbon chatas umesa. They would bring her carbon oila. If she brought the chatas, they bring the oila. They brought the chatas, they bring the oila, right? And it has to be that she separated the carbon in the lifetime, that she separated the carbon while she was still alive. So therefore, it's a shame oila. According to Rav Yehuda name is Shmuel, if she didn't separate mechayim, loi, then you would not have to bring the oila. Why? The shibud is not the raisa, and therefore it would be unnecessary to go ahead and bring the carbon. Okay, Rashi explains over here, but shibud love the raisa is very important. Rashi. So Rashi is love the raisa. He loymar the nechsayhu the inish that the nechasim of a person are raven bay. They are co-signers for him. Umishabdim midin orev, and they are mishubid forever. Chiyavi has. The property there is standing there as a co-signer to guarantee the loan, to guarantee the chiyuv, in this case, to being a carbon. The EU milva al peh milva shel shtar shavim, and it will make a difference whether the halva took place verbally or it took place b'shtar. El milva b'shtar shu shibudai dechsiv the kosavei nichse achrayin lecha b'shtabdei milva al peh loy mishtabdei. Right. That so. When milva b'shtar, where it's written, would be mishubid, milva al peh would not be mishubid. So if shibuda are not the araisa, then the milva al peh is not mishubid. In this case, it's she went ahead, she made a chiyuv with her verbally. She didn't separate the animal, verbalized that she's going to bring a carbon. In that case, what? You wouldn't have to bring it. That's Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Rav Asi, Rav Yochanan. This is what we need. Again, we're consolidating Rav Asi's statement. So Rav Asi and Rav Yochanan. Even if you weren't mafish mechayim, you be to bring the oila. Even if you so Rabbi Yochanan argues on Shmuel. Shmuel says shibudi lav deraisa, and if you didn't separate the oila, you would not have to bring it. Whereas Rasi says, and then Rabbi Yochanan, even if you didn't separate mechayim, your state is an arev to go ahead and bring the carbon. Al meksav shibud havi deraisa. Okay, so you have the machloikis between Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, and Ravasi the Rabbi Yochanan whether Shibudi the Raisa or not. Shmuel says Shibudi lav the Raisa, and Rabbi Yochanan says Shibude is the Raisa. The Gemara now will bring in other source for what that they had the same people had the same achloikus, and why did they have to have it again? It says more of a pliga b'chadazim. They already had the achloikus once. The Rabu Shmuel Damit Shavayu milva al peh, a milva, a verbal milva al peh that was not written down. Ain't a goyvin min yorshim. The yorshim once. If the person that the loiva died, you would not collect from him the yarshim. Nor would you collect from if he sold property. You would not go ahead and collect from the lukuchas. There's no lien on the property that the lukuchas would have to avoid buying the property, knowing that there's a lien on the property. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Tamid Shavayu milval peh goyvim bein b'yorshim bein milkuchas. A milval peh you will collect. Right? Why? Because shibudi the raisa. If shibudi is the raisa, there's no difference between milva al peh and milva b'shtar. Then the chasim are aravim to the property. So we have a kasha. Why? And by carbon, we have Shmuel saying that if you don't separate it, the property, there's no chiyuv on the property to bring the carbon because shibudi lav deraisa. Says Rabbi Yochanan, there is a chiyuv that, and therefore even if it wasn't separated, there's a shibud on the property to bring it, right? And now we have by a machloikis, by a milva alpeh, milva b'shtar, by can you collect from the yarshim? Can you not collect from the yarshim? Is it lukuchas, not lukuchas, right? The chayre depends. Shibud the rice not says Shmuel that no, you can't collect from the yarshim. Why? Shibud the lav rice said it was a milva al peh, right? Mashenkin a milva b'shtar. Be careful. Milva b'shtar. Even if shibud the lav the rice, you would be able to collect from. And Rabbi Yochanan says you still be able to collect, even though it's a milva al peh, you'd be able to collect. So why are they arguing the venue of karbonis? And why are they arguing the venue of what? Of stam alone? That's the kasha. Why the same people? Why do you have to argue twice? There's more, of course. Why are you going to have to say it's tzricha? You have to make it tzricha, sir. And tell me why would you not know one from the other? Okay, there's the Gemara. If you just tell me this case, the case by halva, over here Shmuel says mishum the loy milva kesuva b'toira. It's not a chiyuv that's shaft by the Torah. We'll explain that in a second. Avo b'hach, but where by karbonis, where it is a milva kesuva b'toira. Aim a moidelu Rabbi Yochanan. I would say you might to Rabbi Yochanan. Well, the Reish Lakish. What's a milva kesuva b'toira? What's a milva kesuva b'toira? Let's see Rashi and let's see Tosfos. Says the lav milva kesuva b'toira. Rashi says like chutulav choiva mi'es hamelech. There's no chiyuv for you from Hashem. Let me iske ma'isa atzmai. You created the chiyuv. It wasn't Hashem creating the chiyuv. A milva kesuva b'toira is where Hashem creates the chiyuv. By a carbon, Hashem is creating the chiyuv. Right. So therefore, I would say that when the Shmuel say there's shibudi lav deraisa, that's when you created the chiyuv. You went ahead and you made halva. Whereas what? Kadosh Baruch Hu creates the chiyuv by saying you got to bring a carbon for your ledas. Maybe that already is like a shibud on your property, and maybe Shmuel will be maida. Kamashman, Shmuel's not maida. Okay, let's see Tosfos for a second. Milva ksuva b'Torah, pirish kigon karbanis, meaning without the Torah telling me, you would not know there's such a thing called karbanis. Pidyon aben. Without the Torah telling me, you would know such a thing as pidyon aben. Ve'erchen. Without the Torah telling me, you wouldn't think the lashon of erki alai, depending upon a person's age, would go ahead and shafa chiyav money. Then he says a chidush nifla v'nezikin shloha yoydim inyani nesinas halalu im loish neschayev Torah. You wouldn't know about these things unless the Torah stated them. So the Tosfos is quoting. Says in the Zikin Bes Hashem, when we get to Masechta Baba Kama, I'll speak out a piece of my Rosh Hashiva on this Tosfos in the first block, but now is not the time. But the bottom line is a milva ksuva b'Torah. It's not something you would know. I would think the chiyuv, even if you hold shibudi lav deraisa, that would be just a self-imposed chiyuv, but a chiyuv that's imposed by the Torah, by the Melech late Rashi, I would say that what there is a chiyuv, and therefore you would pay. Kamashman Shmuel chidush nifla that no, I feel a milva ksuva b'Torah such as the carbon yoledes, you would not have to pay. You would not have to pay shibudi lav deraisa. Therefore, if you didn't separate it, mechayim, you would not have to make it up. Okay, that's the first tzricha in that direction. Now the other tzricha goes in the other direction. B'yashmin in the case of carbon, that what by carbon shibud deraisa, the milva ksuva b'Torah ksuva b'shtar danya. If it's written in the Torah, it's like it's written in the shtar. Avol b'hach, but the case of stam halva, where it's not in the milva ksuva b'Torah, aim a middle l'shmol that shibudi lav deraisa. So tzricha, you need to tell me that what it's shibudi deraisa. Amrav Papa Hilchasa, the halach is the following: Milva peh goyvim min yarshim. A milva al peh you would collect from Yarshin. Ve'ena goiva min halakuchas. A milva al peh you would collect from Yarshim, even though Shibudi Lav Daraisa, you would collect from Yarshim, right? Ve'ena goiva min halakuchas. Goiva min Yarshim, you know why? Because Shibudi Daraisa. Shibud is daraisa. If Shibud is daraisa, so when you collect from lukuchas as well, the less lay kala. You don't collect from because there is no coil. In other words, if I have a star that goes to Bezdin, there's a call that goes out that so and so sold his property, or he lent out money, and his property is there. Then he sold his property. He gave a halva, and the property is there to be collected from. And everyone says avoid going ahead and buying from so and so, because again, if you buy from so and so, the other guy can come ahead, the milva, and can take it back from you. If it's milva al peh, that's between them. It's not in Bezdin. So therefore, there's no coil, and therefore the guy can't go ahead and avoid this. And therefore, we'll go ahead and say no. Even though Shibud Deraisa, by milva al peh, you will not collect from these properties because there's no way you could have avoided it. Okay, getting back to Masechta, the last parts of the Mishnah, the koines asma beget of Mitzvah Habal, and a woman acquires herself with a get of Mitzvah Habal. In other words, she was nikla b'shleisha drachim kesef shtarabiyah. The koines asma beget of Mitzvah Habal, and the Gemara is what you take for granted without thinking. The Gemara is going to ask, how do you know she's hiding herself if her husband dies? Maybe when she's married, she's us forever. I could just say, once a woman's married, she's us forever. So where's the source that a woman that dies can remarry? It's an interesting Gemara. Bishlema get dichsiv the chasala sefer krisis. It says openly, chasala sefer krisis. The shulcha v'holchem beisay v'hoisel ishacher. So obviously the get krisis is going to matter. She can go to another person. Elamisas habal minalon says more svarahu. It's a svara. What's the svara? Who asra? He's the one who asked her by marrying her. Who sharsa? And he by dying matters her. Who sharsa and he matters her. That's the svara. So now we're going to show you a case where someone marries, the Kidushin creates the Issa, and even after he dies, the Issa is still there. The Arroyos, you have the case of Arroyos, the Asa Lahu, that the Kidushin asses, the man asses, Relay Shari Lahu, says Rashi. What are we speaking about? The Arroyos, you have the case of Arroyos, Kigoin, Ashes Aviv, your father goes ahead and marries a woman. Now you have a stepmother. A father dies. He asked it on you. It's still us to marry your stepmother. So his death did not matter. The kalasai, a daughter-in-law, Elena, a person loses his son, still can marry his daughter-in-law. The Eishes Achi Aviv, the wife of his father's brother, his aunt. And if this uncle dies, he still can't marry the aunt. So again, you're telling me the svara, it's not a svara. That just because he's the one that asks that his death matters. I'm giving you cases where he asks and it's still he asks and it still remains asa. So therefore, Arroyos will go ahead to asa levoy sharlahu. Ella, we need another source for what? How do you know the misa of the husband matters the woman? Ella medam rachmana yavama, right? Shein leibonim asura, a yavama that doesn't have children. It's asa for her to go ahead and remarry. Mashma hayesh labonim. If she does have children, mutares. When is there a zika? Only when there's no children. When there's no children, there's no zika. Husband dead, can marry anybody else, right? Can marry somebody else. You have a raya that what? that a woman that dies, the husband dies, matters the woman. The Shaili Yavam says the Gemara, Dilma maybe Einlehem Bonim Asura Alma. If there's no children, she can't marry anybody. However, Shari Liyavam, the Yeshle Bonim Lukuliyam and Nami Asura. I can learn the even as far fetched as this is, but again, in the quest for emes, I could say this is Pshat in the pasuk. If her husband dies and they have no children, she's mutter to marry the Yavam, but she's also to marry the whole world. If her husband dies and they have children, she's also to marry the whole world. So I don't have a pasuk that teaches me that the death of a man matters the woman. Ella midam rachmana, when the Torah says, al midam rachmana almana l'koyin gadol asura, and almana to a koyin gadol is asa, hal l'koyin hedyet sharia, mashma to a koyin hedyet, it would be permitted. Mashma to a koyin hedyet, it would be permitted. Ella, where do you know that if a man dies, that he matters the woman? That what? It's mashma that almon is asa to a kohen gadol. Hala kohen hedyet sharia. Now, what would permit this woman to kohen hedyet? It must be the death of her husband. Furthermore, bedilma le kohen gadol belav. Kohen gadol it's a lav. The kuliyalma be'asei. But everyone else, what? It would be an asei. Okay, what the asei is machlokas b'shayim Rashi Ritva. But in other words, she wouldn't be able to marry. It's a lava b'machal asei. She can marry this one, but that Rashi. Let's do Rashi. Okay, Rashi. L'kul yalma b'asei v'yatsa b'hoysel ishacher. Ayidei gerushin v'lo yadei misa. When could she go marry another person? That's only to gerushin. But adei misa v'shilchel izvu v'lo lacheres. Mashma v'lav mashma. That for this through gerushin v'lo lacheres mashma. The lav habamachal asay asay, and a lav that is achal asay is asay. Taisra says, "Koyam asay amari the ika asay be'eshes ish kegoin v'davak be'ishtoi v'lei be'eshes chaveiroi." Okay, that's what he would say. Anyway, so l'chayra, you have no raya clearly just because you can marry a kohen an almana can marry a kohen gadol that he could marry a kohen hedyet. Maybe it's more severe to marry kohen gadol, it's a lav, but to marry kohen hedyet or anybody else for that matter, lav davar kohen hedyet or anyone else for that matter would be an asay. Says Gemara, "Hi, asay ma'avidite." What does this asay do? Gemara yesakasha. Ida hanya misas abal tishri legami. In other words, if you're going down a darga, she's obviously you're going ahead and from what an isser eshes to an asay. How did it happen? How did it happen? If the husband died and it effectively went ahead and had a heter, so where's an asay? Just say that it's mutter. Ida loya hanya misas abal. Took him with Musa Kamaisa, she should still remain an Eshes Ish. You're either milchus or fleshix, you're not parent. Right? There's no middle ground over here. So where do you ever find the halacha of a middle ground where something's at this end it's an Eshes Ish, and you die, you don't go to being mutter, you go to, okay, you're alive for a kohen gadol and an essay and everyone else in the world. It doesn't make sense. It says, well, alam alay, it doesn't make any sense. I'll give you alam alay, afiktim misa v'okmi al asay. Needed Havi, I'll say that what she goes out from Misa, and I'll put it on say she goes out from Misa, but she's not Mutta, she'll be also be saying. Needed Havi, Apasul Hamikdoshim. Okay, let's speak this out. An animal is a carbon, it gets a mum. What goes now, it goes from Kedushas Haguf to Kedushas Hadomim. This animal, just because it was a carbon, now not all of a sudden becomes chulin. This animal is called Pasul Hamikdoshim. You can't bring it as a carbon, you could eat it, but it's still asa begizav avoid. If it's a sheep or another animal that possibly would have some type of hair, you can't use it. If it's milk, you can't use its milk, and you can't work it. So you see that what? It went from the highest animal of level of being a carbon, but not to an animal chulin that you could work and use its parts that comes out of it. No, it's not. It's still in the middle. So therefore, maybe there is such a svara. Maybe just like a psulim mikdashim goes from a carbon to a middle ground, not to chulin. So to an eshes ish goes to a middle ground of asay and not to a complete mutter to every man in the world. So it's a very, very, very good raya. It's such a good raya. We get off that. Now we look for another source. So midi davi psulim mikdashim the meikari isbu meila. There's a din of meila. Basir begizav avoid, and it's also to go ahead and use the gaze and use the sharings to avoid and to work it. Parkinu, if you get some mum and you go ahead on and you only if you get some mum, throw that in. If you get some mum in parkinu and you redeem it, meila less bay, it doesn't have meila does not have begizav avoid basiri, but it still has begizav avoid. So therefore, enachinami, I could possibly tell you that an almana, a husband dies, the woman's an almana, she's allowed to a kohen gadol and an essay in the rest of the world. It says the Gemara Ella Damakra Penyamis b'Molchama. The pasuk says the following: that what the pasuk says that Umiya ish asher eris isha, a person was engaged lokacha and didn't marry her yet. Yelech v'yashel lebeisai Penyamis b'Molchama v'ish achi kachena. So what's going to happen? He'll go to war. He'll die. And what does it say? Anish achi kachena will be taken by another man. So obviously, what mattered to the other man? It must be his death. So you have a right from the Torah that death of a person would matter onashus ish. It says the word from the pasuk of Pen Yamas b'Molchama v'Ishachi Kachena. Maskal of Shisha B'Rei Ravidi Ema Man Acher Yavam. Let's say the Acher means only the Yavam. We'll go back to our original premise that she can only marry a Yavam if she has no children and no one else in the world. Ravashi Beish Truvus B'Dava. Why can't be speaking by the Yavam? Chada. The Yavam lo yikri acher. Yavam is not called an acher. Yavam is not called an acher. V'oid ksiv. And now another. This is very strange because this means this is an other source. So usually State Shuvas B'dava, why you're not correct. This is one, you're not correct because we don't call the Yavam Acher, and now we're giving another source from the Torah, not the source of Pen Yamas B'Mulchama, and now we're giving another source, right? And what's that other source?
And that proves that the first source is not that proves the first one.
And again, it doesn't disprove the first one, but it gives a second source, right? What's the second source? The pasuk says, Isha Achroin. It says this week's parsha, as a matter of fact. He says, and the second man will hate her. The chassul sefer krisis, the nasim yada, the shilchmi beisai, oy ki yamasi isha achroin, or the latter person will die. Ashel lekachaloy leisha. So if he dies, it's saying flourish that she can marry somebody else, and therefore, right? Because the chassul sefer krisis, oy ki yamasi isha achroin, the iskis misul gerushin. Ma gerushin shaya. Just like Gerushin Shaya, it permits a Vigoimeres completely. Afmisa, so to the death, Shaya Vigoimeres. So now you have to look at two sources, either Peryamas Melchama or the Hekesh to Gerushin, where Gerushin completely goes ahead and allows a person to remarry who had did the death of a husband. I wish everyone a good tavach from Yerushalayim, Yera Kodesh.